My CEO husband, finding me tiresome, had set my contact permissions to the lowest possible level. I couldn't contact him for routine matters, and even urgent issues required the approval of his white moonlight assistant. The day I suffered a miscarriage, I bypassed his assistant, Megan, and called him directly. Before I could speak, he lashed out at me. Do you think everyone is as idle as you are just because you're pregnant? I take hundreds of calls a day. Do you know how much this 30 seconds has cost me? After hanging up, he immediately blocked me on another one of his numbers. At the exact same moment, his white moonlight, Megan, updated her social media status. So-called favoritism is probably becoming the star contact on a successful man's 10 phone numbers blush. My husband, Brian, liked the post and commented, "You deserve it." I smiled faintly and liked the post, adding my own comment, "A perfect match. Wishing you a long and happy partnership." Brian immediately called me back. This was only the 5th time in 5 years of marriage he had voluntarily contacted me. The fragility that followed the unexpected loss of our child caused an unconscious surge of dependency. Brian. The next moment, a torrent of accusations ripped through my ear. "Audrey, don't think you can cause trouble just because you're pregnant. Go delete that comment immediately. Megan and I are professional partners. What will people think of her because of your comment? Delete it. Then apologize to Megan. She's crying because of your ridiculous meddling." I shook my head, mocking the tiny flicker of hope I had just felt. "I'm sorry. I simply thought you two made a well-matched partnership. I didn't intend to cause offense." Brian paused, clearly surprised by my obedient acceptance of blame. In the past, I would have been tearful, sobbing and demanding to know the nature of his relationship with Megan. I suffer from a medical condition that makes me prone to immediate tears. Whenever I argued with Brian, words would get stuck in my throat, and the tears would flow uncontrollably. Brian frequently mocked me for this, often using my inability to speak clearly to bolster his own righteous counteraccusations. But now, my tone was completely calm. "Is there anything else?" Brian was silent for a moment, his voice softening unconsciously. "Megan is usually very generous. Since you recognize your mistake, we won't dwell on it. But you must understand that as Mrs. Hawthorne, you can't speak carelessly." "Understood," I replied indifferently. A nurse nearby noticed the 4-needle backflow and exclaimed, "Bed 2. Where is your family? You are physically weak right now and shouldn't be alone." I gently shook my head. The nurse, seeming to understand, changed the fluid and gave me a look of pity. Hearing this, Brian on the other end grew impatient. "Audrey, are you pulling this stunt again? So many pregnant women in the world, and only you're stuck in the hospital every other day. Do you find it amusing to constantly pretend to be sick for my attention? Why can't you be more like Megan? Independent, generous, and respectable." I leaned against the headboard, struggling to shift my body. My vision blurred, and I felt exhausted. "Got it." I hung up immediately, not waiting for him to finish, and tossed the phone aside. Since I had hung up first, he probably wouldn't contact me again. Just before I fell into a daze, I vaguely noticed 2 new messages on my screen, sent about 10 minutes after I hung up. "Is it serious? Where are you? Do you need me to come over?" I woke up the next morning. When the nurse came to give me a shot, I couldn't resist asking, "Did anyone visit last night?" It was the same nurse from the previous night, and she looked at me with immense sympathy. "Girl, if a man won't show up for you under these circumstances, it's time to let go. Having a child is not a woman's responsibility alone. Your mother would be heartbroken to see you like this." The nurse's words made my eyes burn. I nodded, then pretended everything was fine and looked down at my phone. I happened to scroll past Megan's latest update from the night before. A true top-tier boss. I accidentally cough, and he immediately drives me home and makes me throat-soothing soup. The accompanying photo showed Brian standing by a stove, wearing a cute Starry Lou apron. His large frame seemed awkwardly hunched over. This was a scene I had fantasized about countless times. My pregnancy sickness had been severe. I threw up everything I ate. One night, I suddenly had a craving and begged him to make me a bowl of noodles. He frowned, looking at me as if I were utterly unreasonable. "Don't cause me trouble. I don't know how to cook." He lied. He simply didn't want to cook for me. What I begged and cried for, someone else received just for a cough. I gave a bitter smile, placing a hand over my now flat abdomen. Perhaps this was all for the best. This child had simply chosen a better path for himself. My days in the hospital were boring and dull. Besides the injections, I often wandered around and got friendly with the nurses. Occasionally, would gossip. I didn't expect to hear gossip about myself so soon. The CEO of Hawthorne Group is so romantic. He's willing to put so much effort into an anniversary. I froze. Which Hawthorne Group? The one that's often in the news. Young, promising, and devoted. He spent a fortune just to make his sweetheart smile. I heard he hired her favorite singer, Amy, to hold a private concert just for her. The girl is sweet, though, and released some tickets for free. I didn't win any, unfortunately. Well, I did. They showed me their phones, displaying their winning records. I took one of the phones and read the concert poster's slogan clearly. A lifetime only for one person. The nurses sighed. A genuinely good man, staying true to his first love for over 10 years. True to his first love. I forced a tight, ugly smile. They were right. He had indeed never changed. He had always favored Megan. I was just an accident between them. I was discharged the day the concert was held. Whether by coincidence or luck, I had won one of the return tickets. Amy was one of my favorite singers. When we were dating, I told Brian countless times that I wanted to see my favorite concert with the person I loved most. Brian would pat my head and say, "We will. I promise." 5 years into our marriage, ever since Megan reappeared in his life, he seemed to have completely forgotten. I never thought it would happen this way. I sat in the stands, listening to the most heartbreaking love songs. Through the large screen, I saw my husband open his arms to catch his white moonlight as she ran toward him. His face held a depth of affection and attachment I had never witnessed before. Megan, my life is complete because of you. I hope this concert becomes a unique memory for you. Boom. Behind them, a loud crash sounded in the night sky, blooming into spectacular fireworks. So, this was what he looked like when he loved someone. I suppose I was there for the experience. As the fireworks faded, I quickly hid the shame on my face and walked away. This borrowed romance was over. I got home around 11. The house was devoid of life, as if no one had been back since I left. I quickly tidied up and lay exhausted on the sofa, opening the message from Megan. The opportunity for overseas advancement is rare, and I've always believed in your abilities. As your friend, I hope you consider yourself first. Megan was my longtime business partner and friend. Our company had started as a small venture, and initially, the profits were marginal. After marriage, Brian urged me to stay home. I couldn't bear to abandon my hard work and persevered. Now, it had become my only retreat. Seeing that I hadn't replied, Megan sent another message. "Are you really going to give this up for a man? If you back out, the girls working under you will be clearer-headed than you." I had always postponed the decision, claiming the duration of the overseas assignment was too uncertain. Megan knew I was simply reluctant to leave Brian. 3 years of dating. 5 years of marriage. I had grown dependent on Brian's presence, especially after my parents died. He became my sole source of emotional support. I had loved him for 8 years, yet he hadn't spared me a single thought. "I'm going. Only a fool wouldn't go," I replied. Megan called immediately. "Are you sure? No take-backs?" I confirmed it. "Do you need to postpone? Don't you have a few months left until delivery?" The baby, I instinctively touched my stomach. The child chose a better family to be born into. "Please make the arrangements for me." Megan was silent for a moment, her voice dry when she spoke again. "Then get ready. As soon as you handle things domestically, well, leave." Brian didn't come home for the next few days. However, the usually quiet 3-person chat group suddenly saw increased activity. "Brian. Megan. Attend the dinner party with me tonight." Megan. "Of course." Brian. Megan. "I really like the tie you picked out today." Megan. "That's just because you look good in anything." Brian blushed JPG. I didn't understand. This group chat was always meant for me to report updates to him. Brian claimed he didn't want to be bothered by too many messages, so I could only contact him here. After my message was screened and approved by Megan, she would notify Brian to check it. Now, they were mutual star contacts, yet they were using this group chat solely to flirt. In the past, I would have been furious over being ignored for days and would have tagged Brian repeatedly, demanding to know where he was and why he wasn't home. Now, I simply muted the conversation. The constant notifications were annoying. Megan had already submitted the application. Once approved, I would leave. I used this time to pack up all my belongings in the house. Halfway through packing, a soft groan interrupted me. I checked the time. It was surprisingly early. Brian, you're holding me too tight. I'm uncomfortable. Where are you uncomfortable? I would never let you suffer. Brian's voice was hoarse, tinged with drunkenness. Upon seeing me, neither of them panicked or moved apart. Brian even hugged her tighter. Oh, you're home. I hadn't seen a message, so I thought you were missing. I nodded, acknowledging them. Carry on. Be quiet if possible. I rubbed my shoulders. After a day of packing, I just wanted to go out and eat something good. As I turned to change clothes, Brian's furious voice exploded behind me. Stop right there. Confused, I looked back. Megan's eyes were brimming with tears. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I didn't think Audrey would misunderstand me, but I was doing my job. How could she think that? Brian and I are just good partners. I only drove him home because he was drunk. Yes. Good. That's very kind of you. I replied perfunctorily. I only told you to carry on. Where did you think I was going with that? She faltered, clearly surprised by my composure, the complete absence of my usual choked up, tearful arguing with Brian. She stopped talking, just as I was about to leave. Brian halted me again. Audrey, are you done with the drama? You unjustly slandered Megan, and she was kind enough not to hold it against you. Yet you just turn and walk away. Or are you still holding a grudge because she didn't approve your unreasonable request the other day? The other day was when I had a threatened miscarriage and couldn't reach Brian's private doctor. My repeated requests to contact him were rejected by Megan. By the time I took an ambulance to the hospital, the baby was gone. He irritably tugged at his tie. Megan didn't approve your request. And you're fine anyway. Apologize to her now. I gave a cold laugh. As you wished. The baby is all ready. Brian, don't argue with Audrey because of me. Megan interrupted me, her eyes misty. Audrey, this is my fault. But aren't you also at fault? Brian works so hard outside, but you never send a word of comfort in the chat. Only requests. That's fine. You two are star contacts for each other. Mutual care will be easy. I mocked lightly, whether it was a misperception or not. Brian's face seemed to relax slightly after I said that. It was baffling, but I had no interest in figuring it out. My stomach was rumbling. Before they could react, I walked out without even changing my clothes. I walked until I reached a familiar street stall selling Odin Japanese stew. The warm, yellow light shone on the signet looked exactly as it had for years. This was the stall Brian and I frequented most often in college. Back then, his family had fallen into poverty, and his childhood sweetheart had abandoned him. As for me, a car accident had taken my parents, leaving me without a home. Neither of us could handle spice. Yet we always ordered the spiciest option, eating until our eyes were red and streaming. Two lonely souls slowly drew closer, warming each other with our presence. I was even naive enough to believe that my parents, unwilling for me to be alone, had sent this equally lonely soul to accompany me. Boss, one extra spicy vegetarian set, please. Coming right up. $15. I paused. The price hadn't changed in 2 years. I'll get it. A hand blocked my view, scanning the QR code with a phone. Boss. Same order. Extra spicy, but only meat. No vegetables. I looked up. Brian stood casually, his suit jacket draped over one arm, the top 2 buttons of his shirt undone. A few strands of hair fell across his forehead, a stark contrast to his usual stringent CEO look. It felt like a sudden regression back to the past. You truly haven't changed at all. He sat down, picking up a pair of chopsticks and scraping off the splinters. Haven't you gotten tired of eating this after all these years? Tired? I smiled. Yes. Everyone else had gotten tired of it long ago. Only I was still clinging to the past flavor. Are you still mad? I have been busy with work lately. I admit I haven't spent much time with you. How about this? I'll add you on my newest number, it hasn't filled up yet. His tone was patronizing. But you should learn to be sensible. Don't contact me unnecessarily. A man needs to conquer the world. Your job is not to hold me back. Megan understands this better. That familiar, suffocating feeling rose from my core. I nodded, not attempting to argue with him at all. Brian stared at me strangely, a look of confusion in his eyes. You have nothing else to say? I took a few bites. The food was authentic, and the spice hit me hard, burning my throat. This is really good. His eyebrows furrowed. He was clearly unhappy with my reaction. I knew why. Normally, if he offered to eat a meal with me and let me add his private number, I would have been overjoyed, rushing to hug and kiss him. How dare I react so calmly? He angrily stirred the bottom of his bowl with his chopsticks. After all these years, you really haven't changed. Why do you insist on eating this trash? A phone call interrupted whatever else he was about to say. He paused and put the call on speaker. Megan's voice, sickly sweet, came through. Brian, my car broke down on this remote road, and I'm scared. Can you come help me? Brian glanced at me first. I was eating heartily, the spice making my throat burn. He gritted his teeth. Okay, wait there. I'll be right there. After hanging up, Brian stared intently at me for a moment. Do you really have nothing to say to me? I looked puzzled. Aren't you going? It's not safe for a woman to be alone outside this late. Fine. You are just fine. He grabbed his jacket, kicking the chair away viciously. As he left, he dropped one last instruction. Stop eating this junk food. It's bad for the baby. A 4-month pregnancy leaves small traces. As my partner, if he had looked closely, he might have noticed the abnormality. But he asked nothing, only because he didn't care. Hiding the mockery in my eyes, I returned to enjoying my meal without looking up. The application has been approved. The flight is a month and a half from now. Good. I returned home late. Brian hadn't come back. This was normal. Even if he did return, he wouldn't disturb me. Brian and I had been sleeping in separate rooms for 2 years. Since I got pregnant, he hadn't stepped foot into my room once. The separation initially started because I disagreed with his requirement that I must report every single thing to Megan first. I didn't understand why a wife the closest person in the world to him was always ranked after his family, his work, his friends, and everyone else. After a massive fight, he stood by the bed and gave me a cold look. Since you refuse to learn, you can sleep alone from now on. He knew I would be plagued by nightmares of the car crash if I slept alone over and over until I finally submitted. But habits are strange things. It was hard for a day, hard for a month, but after half a year, I slowly grew used to it. Later, aside from mandatory marital relations, we never shared a bed. Even after sex, we would return to our separate rooms. I quickly tidied up and went to bed. In the middle of the night, a large, dry hand slowly traced my waist, and I woke up instantly. Before I could react, Brian lunged forward, capturing my lips swiftly and precisely. His breath was familiar yet distant. My body instantly tensed, recoiling almost instinctively. He paused, sensing my resistance, and his movements became rougher. Be good. It's been so long. Don't you miss me? I asked the doctor. It's fine. No, I can't. I pushed him away fiercely, scrambled off the bed, and put sufficient distance between us. He remained on the bed, panting heavily, looking disheveled. What exactly is wrong with you? My lack of compliance was always viewed as me being unreasonable. It was as if I were a small, pathetic dog, and if the master simply beckoned, I should drop all my dignity and try to please him. But this time, I refused. Brian irritably yanked at his collar. Playing these games is pointless. Understood. He laughed in exasperation. Then he turned and slammed the door shut. The next day, Brian's primary number, the one I hadn't heard from in ages, sent me a message. Be at the family house for dinner at 7 tonight. Okay. I gave a wry smile and agreed. In the evening, I stepped out of the taxi with several large bags. As I reached the front door, I could hear the elderly matriarch's cheerful laughter inside. Only Megan truly understands me. Unlike some people who are late even when coming to see me. I checked the time. 6:30. This was a classic move by Brian. If I misbehaved, he would send me to the family house to learn some manners. I hadn't expected Megan to be there this time. What a pity about the timing. Or else my beautiful, well-behaved daughter-in-law would be you. Megan glanced coyly at Brian, then playfully complained. Auntie, don't tease me. Despite her words, her eyes were clearly shining with smugness. I walked in, and Brian's mother's face instantly darkened. As the Hawthorne wife, you still lack propriety. Showing up with all those bags, what are you? A dumpster diver. Brian stood there, arms crossed, one eyebrow slightly raised, clearly waiting for me to plead for help. Brian's mother had always felt I had married above my station. If Brian's family hadn't suffered a temporary setback, I wouldn't have had the chance to marry him. Later, as Brian's career flourished, and his ideal daughter-in-law returned, she grew increasingly impatient with me. Yet, her son never mentioned that the reason he and Megan didn't work out years ago wasn't fate, but that Megan had abandoned him. Ordinarily, I would have nudged Brian's arm, signaling him to defend me. "You're right," I said, placing the items down. "But these are all things your son bought to show his filial piety to you." I pulled out the contents of the bags one by one. Jewelry, a heart-shaped necklace, a red evening dress. With every item I presented, Brian's face grew darker. He recognized them. Of course, these were the items he gave me only after Megan had rejected them. I had packed them up recently, and now was the perfect time to borrow a flower to offer to Buddha. Brian's mother beamed. "It's rare for Brian to think of me so much." Brian's jaw was tight. After a long pause, he nodded grudgingly. He radiated coldness throughout dinner. "Thank you, Auntie and Brian. These are all my favorite dishes," Megan said, her voice overly exaggerated. Brian's expression finally eased a little. "Come, eat more." Looking at the table, there were hardly any dishes a pregnant woman could safely eat. Brian piled food onto Megan's plate, but his peripheral vision kept sweeping over to me. I pretended not to notice and picked up a piece of salmon sashimi. It was my absolute favorite before the pregnancy, and now I could finally eat it again. Just as I put it in my mouth, Megan let out a surprised cry. "Brian, the food is spilling." Brian ignored her completely. Instead, he leaned across the table with startling speed and slapped the salmon sashimi out of my hand. "Are you insane? You shouldn't joke with the baby's life just because you're jealous." The dinner ended badly. Brian drove me home. I pretended not to see his hand reaching for my bag and headed straight for the back seat door. "Audrey." His voice was grave. Puzzled. I looked at him. He frowned slightly. "Sit in front." "No." I refused instinctively. When Brian drove, the passenger seat was always reserved for Megan. He claimed she got carsick and needed to sit up front to feel better. I had fought and argued with Brian over this. I let her have it normally. "But I have terrible morning sickness right now. Can't you make an exception for me?" I cried, demanding answers, but only provoked his fury. "Every woman gets pregnant. Who is as high maintenance as you? If you have so many demands, take a cab." He threw me out of the car, leaving me stranded in the middle of a remote area. I waited over an hour in the cold wind for a ride. After that, I never insisted on the passenger seat again. Amused to the back, Megan bit her lip, looking wronged. "If Audrey doesn't want to sit up front, Brian, we shouldn't pressure her." Brian looked at me, then consoled Megan warmly. "If she's being difficult, we don't need to indulge her." He spoke to her, but his eyes were fixed on me, seemingly trying to discern something in my expression. He was destined for disappointment. I was completely calm, without a ripple of emotion. No jealousy, no accusations. I opened the back door without hesitation. Brian gritted his teeth, losing his usual composure when tending to Megan. He slammed the car door shut and aggressively accelerated the car. I gripped the seatbelt, unable to understand his inexplicable rage, but having no desire to investigate it. Brian scoffed, glaring at me coldly through the rearview mirror. The car was silent. Even Megan kept quiet, watching his mood. When we approached an intersection, Brian suddenly spoke. "You didn't eat enough tonight, did you? What do you want to eat?" Megan nodded, indulging in a little flirtation. "Brian, you're so bad. You know I'm dieting, but you keep trying to tempt me." Brian smirked, sounding slightly helpless. "Silly girl. I was asking your wife." I was startled. "Me? Who else?" He sounded displeased, then paused. "Even if you're throwing a tantrum and not eating, you shouldn't starve my son." I found it funny. He, who never cared about the baby, now frequently brought him up, self-righteously accusing me, as if I were the neglectful mother. "I don't care." I closed my eyes, ending the conversation. Brian grew even more unhappy. "When is your next prenatal checkup?" He glanced at me, seeming hesitant. "Have your recent checkups been good? I haven't seen you post anything in the group." Before I could answer, Megan let out a low groan. "Brian, My stomach hurts so bad. Brian froze. Megan, what is it? He immediately realized. Damn it. I forgot you're on your period right now. His expression panicked, and he glanced back at me. Audrey. Megan has always suffered severe period pain. I have to. I shook my head, cutting him off preemptively. Go to the hospital. You can drop me off here. He looked stunned, seemingly surprised by my compliance today. Brian dropped me off by the roadside, and as I stepped out, he suddenly grabbed my hand. Audrey, I'll try to come home early tonight. I was momentarily confused. Okay, I'll leave the door unlocked for you. I'm sorry. Through the slowly rising car window. His voice was indistinct. I smiled. It doesn't matter. I retrieved a package when I got home. The divorce papers. 12:30 a.m. Brian still wasn't home. No messages. And not even an update from Megan. I didn't wait up as I used to. I packed my last bag of belongings and prepared for bed. In the middle of the night, a phone call startled me awake. Audrey. Brian got into a fight with someone at a bar. You need to get down here immediately. My heart skipped a beat. After a moment of hesitation, I called a taxi. As soon as I arrived, Brian's friend urgently pulled me inside. This is all my fault. I thought it had been a while since Megan and I hung out, so I asked Brian to bring her. He was being conspicuously vague, but some idiot provoked Megan, and Brian lost control and punched him. If the guy were just anyone, it would be fine, but he's not. Now they're in a situation, betting on who can drink an entire table of hard liquor. Brian's stomach is terrible. Audrey, please. You have to talk him out of this. As I entered, I saw bottles piled high on and under the table. Brian's bottles were mostly empty. Megan stood beside him, holding his left arm, her eyes teary. His friends were gathered around them, too preoccupied to notice my arrival. He's crazy. I haven't seen Brian this reckless in years. I thought he had finally settled down, but he loses all rationality when it comes to Megan. Someone noticed me and nudged the friend who had been talking. I ignored them, silently watching the pathetic drama unfolding. Brian's hand was trembling slightly, and with every gulp of alcohol, his face grew paler. Despite looking deathly ill, he forced himself to continue, unwilling to show weakness in front of Megan. I remembered how much Brian hated drinking, except for mandatory social engagements. He was practically a teetotaler. In the early days of his startup, he drank himself sick almost every night just to land deals. He was a terrible drunk, needing constant care, until one time, he ended up with a severe gastric hemorrhage, and I stayed by his hospital bed all night, weeping. When he woke up, he gently wiped the tears from my face, held me, and softly promised, "Don't cry, sweetheart. I swear I won't ever do this again." This was the first time I had seen him like this since that day. 2 bottles remained on the table. Brian's face was chalk-white, and he gripped his stomach tightly with one hand. Seeing him nearing his limit, his friends urged him to stop. Brian, are you insane? If you drink anymore, you'll kill yourself. Audrey, hurry. Talk some sense into him. Someone pushed me forward. Brian turned and looked at me, a flash of surprise, perhaps even a hint of guilt, in his eyes. Then he grabbed the remaining bottle determinedly and gulped down the liquor. He won, but the price was collapsing onto the floor and being rushed to the hospital. Before he lost consciousness, his breathing ragged, he tightly gripped Megan's hand and declared to the opponent, "You lost." Apologized to her. From beginning to end, I was nothing more than an irrelevant bystander, observing a dramatic love story. When I visited the hospital the next day, Brian was still asleep. Megan called me out of the room. She smiled faintly, a hint of triumph in her voice. "See, this is what Brian looks like when he loves someone. If I were you, I would have left in shame already. Why cling to a man who doesn't love you?" She held her chin high, like a victorious rooster. I took out the divorce papers, ignoring her provocation. "If you're so confident, then please ask him to sign this agreement." Her eyes immediately darted to the papers, and she snatched them away eagerly. "At least you're smart enough to realize." Handing over the agreement felt like completing a major task. Brian trusted her implicitly, so getting the signature shouldn't be a problem. A noise came from the room. Megan gave me a cold look and went back inside. I could faintly hear their voices inside, and I thought I heard my name mentioned. It wasn't important. So I turned to leave. The next moment, Brian staggered out of the room. The hand holding the papers was slowly bleeding through the foresight. "Why didn't you come in?" His voice was urgent. The familiar urgency felt strange now. In the past, that panicked role was usually mine. "Why are you out? You should be resting," I said coolly. He hid the agreement behind his back and walked closer to me, step by step. "Audrey, sweetheart, are you upset about how much I drink?" "I can explain." The long-lost nickname made me falter slightly. When he embraced me, I didn't even have time to struggle. His voice held a hint of pleasure. "Sweetheart, you're angry, aren't you?" This was the sensibility he always wished for. Yet now he seemed to prefer that I make a scene. But I pushed myself out of his arms and backed away several steps. He looked lost, his tone softening even more. "Last night, when I saw Megan being bullied, I suddenly remembered when you were forced to drink wine for my sake years ago. I've always regretted that I couldn't stand up for you back then. That's why I was so reckless." "I didn't mean." I cut him off. "It doesn't matter. You saw the divorce papers, right? Sign them as soon as possible." Brian shook his head frantically. "Sweetheart, don't make this kind of joke. It hurts my feelings." His eyes seemed to mist over as he pleaded with me. "I want." Patient in room 3. "What are you doing? You shouldn't be out of bed." Hearing the nurses shout, Brian acknowledged her. Then, as if eager to escape, he swiftly retreated into his room. "I have to go back. We can talk later." Over the next few days, Brian started contacting me under various pretexts, but he avoided any discussion of divorce. He removed me from the blacklist of all 10 of his phones and set me as a star contact on each. His social media, which rarely involved me, suddenly featured me heavily, reminiscing about the place my wife and I love to visit. Accompanying photo was our couple picture from 4 years ago, looking forward to a camping trip with our family of 3 once the baby is born. He even deleted every post related to Megan. But what was the point of all this? I sent him only one reply. "Let's talk." He didn't respond. He seemed content to continue his self-directed public farce of devotion on social media. I couldn't control that. All my luggage had already been shipped out. The last box was stored at Megan's house. And tomorrow, I would leave directly from there. Before leaving, I had a final dinner with my colleagues. Between the full meal and the slight buzz of alcohol, I vaguely felt myself embraced in a familiar set of arms. "How can you drink?" His clear voice was close to my ear. "Thank you all for looking after her." Inevitably, someone joked, "Wow, Mrs. Hawthorne's husband is so handsome. She'll definitely miss you when she's abroad." Brian's body immediately stiffened. I managed to gather my wits and handle the situation. On the way back, he harshly squeezed my shoulders. "Sweetheart, they were joking, right?" His grip was hard enough to hurt me. I frowned. He instantly let go. "I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" I ignored his eager expression. In leaving the country, he stared at me intensely, the veins bulging on his forehead. Yet he forced himself to hold back his anger. "What about me and the baby? Are you abandoning us?" His voice trembled as he continued to press me. You weren't like this before. The baby and I were always the most important things, weren't we?" "Yes, but that was before." I let out a shaky laugh, almost crying from the absurdity. "Brian, can you just see clearly? What's the point of this self-deception? The baby, where is the baby? He died the night you hung up on me. Just like you saidn't bother me unless it's important. The day I was discharged, you organized a concert exclusively for Megan. Remember? Why do you think that after everything that has happened, I could still be the silly person who loved you?" I pushed his hand away. Brian froze, tears streaming down his face. "Sweetheart, you're lying, aren't you? I know I haven't been good enough before. Give me a chance. We are still young. If the baby is gone, we can have another one." I shook my head. "Brian, it's too late. I don't love you anymore." Suddenly, he seemed to lose all strength, his body curling into a painful huddle. I watched him calmly, then turned and walked away. On the day of my flight, I was waiting in the lounge. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed over the airport speaker system. "Sweetheart, I genuinely love you. Even if you can't forgive me now, I will wait here until you come back. I admit, I ignored you too much because of work over the years, but I swear, I will make it up to you." Brian's voice was filled with deep emotion through the broadcast. Immediately afterward, passers-by began handing me roses. Megan nudged my arm with her elbow, teasing. The exact same tactic as 8 years ago. Well, are you moved yet? I rolled my eyes and begged her. Everything done and eaten in the past counts. But please forgive my youthful ignorance from back then. Fine. I'll shield you. Run fast. I can't thank you enough. Using the cover Megan provided, I managed to avoid Brian's attempts to detain me and boarded the plane. When I turned my phone back on, Megan forwarded me a video link. It turned out that the public spectacle Brian had created at the airport had been posted online by netizens. His new title as a devoted husband quickly backfired when people dug up the true love concert he had held for his childhood sweetheart just months prior. Overnight, public opinion reversed. He and Megan were trending for all the wrong reasons. I closed the video, uninterested in their affairs. I immersed myself entirely in my work. The branch company's progress was smooth. The next message I received from Brian was 2 years later. He suddenly sent me a will, leaving all his assets to me. Inside the file was a note containing only one sentence. Can you come see me one last time? Stage 4 stomach cancer. Because the document was delayed for so long, he had been gone for a month by the time I received it. I donated all his assets. Time moves on, and now we are even.